I must not fear. Fear is a mind killer. Fear is a little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Fear plays a major part in the daily life of people. Everyone feels fear and knows what it feels like. Everyone knows fear. Well, what exactly is fear, and what have those who seem to have none figured out? To start things off, we need to acknowledge that fear and courage are two sides of the same coin. Without fear, there is no courage, just like how without illness, there is no healing. So in a world without fear, there also would be no courage. What would a world like that look like? Objectively, an indifferent world like that would be boring and bland. Human beings are wired to constantly seek challenge and overcome, to lean in and accomplish things. Neuroscience suggests that we attach our dopamine reward system to things that we believe to be important. In other words, we are in control of the things that make us feel good or bad, for better or for worse. How we attach meaning to things ultimately decides the feeling we get out of them. A world without fear would be an indiscriminate world, where we would not be in contact or receive feedback from emotions. Emotions are an important part of life. They come from deep held beliefs. Beliefs that are usually so deeply rooted, the emotions seem to be a factor out of our control. However, a life without emotion would be like a life without a judge or reaction to events. An integral part of the self would disappear, and hence life would lose all colour. Therefore, a life without the ability to overcome, without the ability to test and have different outcomes, would be a tasteless life. Emotions are almost like feedback mechanisms that give us input into the situation at hand. But then why do we fear the emotions themselves? And why is it so admirable to be able to lean into them and drive the way we see best? And when is fear good, and when is it not so helpful or adaptive? Does the answer lie in the response to fear or the emotion itself? Are some people just wired to enjoy that feeling more than others? Looking at a biological perspective, what does fear do? Why is it adaptive? Fear essentially alerts us that whatever the source is important and should be paid attention to. It streamlines our thinking and readies us for the upcoming event. So in that way it is good. But why does it sometimes freeze us in our steps and put us on the defensive? Why do some people curl up in response and others walk forward? I think the answer lies in the perspective individuals take of fear. You either befriend fear and allow it to be your trusted friend, or you listen to it, allowing it to speak without taking it as a truth, but filtering the useful information it has to offer you, almost like a counselor of your committee. In the first option of befriending the fear, you are putting trust into it, almost like you would a friend in real life. When you put trust in something, it automatically means you have your guard down to it. You don't question it. This is dangerous, because when you trust something fully, you become a slave to it. Therefore, whatever it speaks must be true. This mind frame leaves you vulnerable to being misled and losing control. It then also follows that in order to have befriended the fear, you must have at one point handed over the position willingly. And why would a person do this? It may be a lack of self-belief and confidence, and trust in one's own self, to the point where one submits to emotions to lead the way. If emotions lead the way, you won't have to make the decisions yourself anymore. Therefore, if things go wrong, you cannot blame yourself. You are free of responsibility, and you don't want this responsibility because you no longer trust yourself. This must be the chain of thinking. The result of this thought process is being guided and pulled by emotion. You have befriended fear in fear of it. You don't trust yourself, so this partnership works, because at least emotions seem to be less in our control. And since this person does not trust themselves, anything that is less associated with the self is more likely to be true in their mind. Now, looking at the other perspective of fear, the perspective that it is a voice to be listened to, but it should not be handed your trust. Immediately, a sense of self is established. There is yourself, and there is emotion. You are not this emotion. In the June series by Frank Herbert, fear is referred to as a mind killer. This is another segue into this trail of thinking. However, in this perspective, fear is viewed as something negative. However, it is not rejected or ignored. It is acknowledged. It is real. But since it is personified, it is not judged, because one does not associate it with oneself. Fear is an event that happens. In the June series, it is mentioned that what you have to do is let it pass over you and through you. Once this distinction between self and emotion is established, one is free to make their own decision. One recognizes that the truth comes from the self and not from outside, and with this trust in oneself, one can move forward independently and without hesitation. This is courage. As cliche as it may sound, it is to be so at one with oneself that the self is forgotten, because this process is so automatic. When the self is forgotten, the truth becomes clear and good can be done. This is what is demonstrated in all heroic acts that we witness in storytelling, where the character seems to be acting against all self-interest to achieve good. However, ironically, this is achieved by having a self that is so in order that it can no longer blind itself. When the self dissipates, we are almost free to see things for what they are, not what we project onto them. And this is what it means to do good, to act in accordance with the truth. No self-interested motives remain, because the self is no longer at risk of collapsing and does not need to grasp at straws of illusion to survive. Like being in a well-built building, your confidence in the building's ability to hold frees you to be able to do other things and truly see and interact with them. You are now not holding every step in fear that the next one could collapse the building. Whereas in a weak building, you are so occupied with it falling apart, you are no longer free to do things from a clear conscience. Now that your building is in order, you have the capacity to venture out and fix other buildings. So this is what I understood about the topic of fear after delving in trying to gain a better understanding. I would love to know if you enjoyed the video and gained something useful from it, or if you have any other views or opinions on the topic. Please feel free to drop these in the comments with any suggestions for future topics.